Is that okay, Daphne? Do you want to add anything into that?
Yeah, you're free to turn off your cameras if you're not okay with it. Yeah.
Fab. Okay, that's great. So Daphne's here to support the session, and also she may join in. Who knows what's going to happen. We're all leaders in our own right, so we've all got something to contribute to this conversation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some content, and then that'll be about 15 minutes worth, 20 absolute max, and then we're just going to open it up for discussion. So that'll feel different to what you've already experienced today. I sat in on some of the session, and I think there's a lot of information that's coming your way, which is needed and necessary. And I'm hoping this session will feel like it's got a different kind of quality to it, hopefully. So there's still some content I'm going to share. Welcome and thank you to those of you that are typing in the chat where you're coming from. Would you mind, Daphne, moving us to the next slide, which is oh no, I can do it myself, can't I now? I can do it. It's okay, we had an agreement and then the plan changed, but my brain was going back to the old agreement. Okay, so I'm moving to the next slide, and I'm hoping that can you just give me a thumbs, Mark, because I can see you, Mark or Daphne, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the green purpose of the session slide? Perfect, thank you so much. So here's the essence of this session. The blurb that you've had is about taking time out to consider how to look after yourselves as leaders to ensure you can continue to provide the right sort of support for young people of SEND and their families and practitioners across your area. What I'm going to hopefully share with you are some ideas for how to psychologically take care of yourselves as you navigate whatever it is you're navigating right now. So I'm going to come back to that. So, but I want to contextualize it to think about leadership too. So I'm going to ask you, everybody, call to mind somebody who has been a really significant leader in your life or work. And somebody probably will just pop into your mind, but just call to someone to mind that's been a really powerful influence on you in a good way. And then consider what were the qualities of leadership that they had that made them so significant for you, and then just type some of those qualities in the chat. What did they do, or how did they be that made them such good leaders? Appreciative, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's so important, Alison, isn't it? Having, when we look for things that people are doing well, we get far better things from them. High self-esteem. So they had high self-esteem, Daphne, or they helped you with they thought well of themselves. They were willing to be who they were, and that be okay. Supportive, yeah, absolutely. Can-do attitude, yes, and positivity. Empathetic, yes. The ability to name the perspective someone else is in, and also the emotions that are in that, so someone feels seen and understood. Subject knowledge, absolutely. It's challenging, Laura, I hear, when you're line managed by someone or with someone who doesn't have the operational background that you do, so they don't understand the technicalities. Calm, good listener, brings things to action, brave decision making that bucks the trend. Yeah, we're going to talk about courage this afternoon. Commands respect. So Laura, I make up there's something about a person's presence. If they're commanding respect, there's something about their way they're being. Because I guess we've all known leaders that command fear. So that feels very different to someone who commands respect. For me, there's something about connection in there. Yeah, time for you when struggling or not, being available and present, especially when working at home. Yeah, availability. And there's something for me about being open to being approached. So maybe good boundaries too in that person. Welcome, Darren. Welcome. We're just talking about what makes a good leader. So feel free to join in if you call to mind someone that has been a good leader for you and then want to add any qualities to the chat. You can join in that way. Calm, clear, and follows through. Yes, Nicola, absolutely. So easy to trust because there's something about what they're doing which is reliable. Aspirational, Mark. Yeah, absolutely. What are we where are we going? What is a vision that creates an uplift or joy in people, or makes people want to follow it? At the very least, calls out something powerful in people. That's great. And it looks like by the speed of your response, it looks like it was a pretty quick an easy question to answer, calling to mind somebody that was a powerful leader for you. I'm not going to do it now because we've got a short time together and I want to leave you uplifted, but you could equally answer the question about who has been a challenging leader for you and think of the qualities. They're probably the reverse of what you've said. So when you look at leadership as a body of research in psychology, it's enormous. If you've ever done any leadership qualifications or leadership trainings, there's not just one recognized way of defining leadership and then contextualizing, well, how do I do it then? So there's, you might look at leadership styles or authentic leadership, or more recently, we need to be thinking about systems leadership, because you're having to influence people across boundaries. It's not just about the organization or the team that you work in. And I make up that a lot of you will probably work solo in lots of ways. If you're the person holding the send agenda, I don't know whether this is true, but I hear from other people. I do some work with NDTi in the SEND program, the Leadership SEND program. So that's my exposure to SEND. My background's adult social care. And beyond that, occupational psychology. So my job is about people's well-being at work and what inspires us, and how do we bring all of who we are into workplaces that don't always let us be who we are. That's kind of my background. So, and I think from what I've learned about your world is that often you're the only voice in the room trying to put something across where other people have got different agendas. So they're difficult conversations to have. So leadership has got a big history and it's a broad area of research. And so the invitation I want to offer you is that everybody here is a leader. We are all leaders because we all have the ability to change the world around us, the system around us, how the system thinks, just by the way we're being when we're at work and we're interacting with other people. And I want to link back to something I heard Nicholas Whitaker from CQC talking about. You can't afford to get the decisions wrong for a child. He was talking about a young person living with a learning disability, and he said you can't afford to get the decisions wrong. And I thought about the context of what I'm going to share with you today, and how if you've got hanging over you, I can't afford to get the decisions wrong. What impact does that have on someone working under pressure, having to make a decision about someone's future under pressure, but not affording to get it wrong? Just type in chat, how would you feel, or how do you feel when you're having to make decisions where you can't afford it to get it wrong? There's no room for failure whatsoever. What's that like? Is it something that you face, and what's that like? I can see that your chat, I don't know if it's my chat's just taking a little while, so. Okay, yeah, a lot of pressure. Totally. And our brains don't work well under pressure, Laura, do they? We go into fight or flight in our brains. Overwhelm. Yeah, so I had a conversation yesterday with a group of leaders about overwhelm. What is that? What am I thinking when I'm in overwhelm? What's my body doing? What's the feeling? We shouldn't feel like the failure rests on one person. Absolutely, Mark. It's a systems issue. So you're working within systems that are interconnected, and also relationship systems that are interconnected as well. So it shouldn't be one person. Stressed. Yeah, absolutely, Daphne. The resource I have got does not meet the demand that's upon me. Exhausted and drained. Yeah, absolutely. And I know these are tough things to own and think about and look at, but until we've actually been honest about how we're thinking and feeling, it's really difficult to make any kind of changes. So, yeah, totally. So support's a really significant thing, Christine, absolutely. Without it, or if the level of pressure is too much, our brains respond as though it were a trigger of, it's a threat, basically. It's as if there's a saber-toothed tiger standing right in front of us. Welcome, if you're just joining, welcome. We're just talking about how it is to make decisions and work under pressure. But so we don't do our best thinking. So the calmest we can be, the most centered and present we can be in ourselves and in our bodies as leaders or people at work or humans, the more likely we are to make good decisions and communicate in a way that creates connection and not disconnection. and many of the people I work with talk about how all the places in relationship at work where we want to influence somebody, but we get hooked or triggered into what's happening, and therefore we start to go into defense instead. So I'm hoping what I'm about to share with you will introduce you to some ideas, although if you've worked with me before, you might have heard some of these ideas before. And then we'll stop and we'll have discussion. Let's open it up for discussion. So the work I'm going to share with you is from Dr. Brené Brown's work. She's a research professor in Houston, and her work has been about human connection. And some of you might have heard of Brené. There's lots. I'm going to share with you some resources. So the last slide I've got, there's literally about 5 or 6 slides. There's not lots and lots of words here. So I'm going to invite you to take in the story of this research as I tell it, to absorb it through my words, as opposed to trying to read the words and cognitively understand it. Her research has been over the past 20 years about human connection. And in the last 7 years, the research has been leaders in organizations and asking, what kind of leadership do we need over the next 5 years? And people said, we need brave leaders, courage, we need courage. And I'm using the word brave and courageous interchangeably, although I think they feel like they're different things. The word courage actually comes from the Latin word cor, C-O-R, which means heart. So leading from the heart, leading with our whole hearts. But the researchers went back to organizations and asked people, what does courage look like in leadership? And how, the reason I'm linking this to challenging times is because I don't know any more powerful work than this to help us navigate and tolerate not knowing what's coming next, which we're sort of having on steroids at the minute collectively. But so in the pink, it shows there are 4 pillars of courage, and they are learnable, teachable, and measurable. So anyone can be a braver leader. Anybody, any of us can learn to be braver. And the 4 pillars are on the white part of the slide. And the essence of them, it's vulnerability, values, trust, and rising skills. And I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of each of those. But to be fair, we could have like a 24-hour, we could spend 24 hours together and dive really deeply into this, and you'd have a very different experience of this. So if it feels intense or a lot, or it's the first time you've seen it, it's okay that it doesn't necessarily land in you. And I think, so the reason I trust this work is because I've taken people through these programs, and I see how people have the courage to recognize these are the parts that are difficult for me in my leadership and my work right now, and this is why it's difficult. So they start recognizing what's happening in their bodies and how they communicate under pressure, and then they can make different changes. They've got different choices. Choice opens up to us because we're no longer defending or reacting or allowing the pressure to force what happens in us next. So let's take these one at a time. And I'm mindful that this is like a whistle-stop tour, and I get excited and my energy gets all high. So I'm going to try and calm down. I'm just going to take a breath. Okay, so the first pillar is about vulnerability. And there's the definition at the bottom on the white, which is, so this is crafted from people's lived experiences of being with uncertainty. It's not just made up. It's actually loads of people like us told stories about what was hard about human connection and being in relationship with other people. And something emerged about, do you know what, when there's uncertainty ahead or there's a risk to be taken, there's a feeling I have, and that feeling is vulnerability. So just type in the chat if you wish, if you want to. What are the kinds of situations? Maybe don't pick the worst ones, because I don't want to, I don't want you to necessarily go to places that are really challenging for you to think about. But what are the situations you're facing right now in your leadership that have uncertainty and or risk in them? What are the meetings or conversations or experiences you're having that have vulnerability? Do you know, like, is it landing? Do you know what that means? Can you identify your own experience that has vulnerability? Inspection completely. Yeah, and I make up there's probably vulnerability on the part of like someone like, I don't know if Nick actually does the inspections himself, but I imagine it's vulnerable for both sides, right? We can sometimes think there's a power dynamic happening, but actually when you look at it, we're all human beings, so we all have the experience of vulnerability, especially if you're being brave. The braver you're being, the bigger the vulnerability is going to feel. Multiple systems being created at pace with no certainty where the children's agenda sits. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not sure who said that, because it's come up with unknown user. But would I be right in thinking that that creates a vulnerability in you because you don't know how you'll do your work, or you don't know how to help the children's agenda move forward, or even like an emotion around why isn't it included? If we're trying to create inclusive environments, why isn't that priority?
I think it's conflictual, because we're in a world where everybody's saying integration, everything's moving towards integration, send integration sits within that. But then you've got people fighting for their own systems. We've got local care organisations, we've got like a GM level for us, we've got those kind of dynamics, we've got integration across local authority and health for send, and it's everybody doesn't know where the future is lying at the minute with regards to, I guess, devolved NHS and where that would sit. So you've got multiple complexities and people not knowing what the future is going to bring.
Right. Yeah, so it's, do you know the term VUCA? It's when you think about leadership, and there's the work of adaptive leadership by Heifetz. I'll type the name in the chat, but the wicked issues. So we've never faced this level before of complexity and challenge and rate and pace of change. So no one's really got a blueprint or the answers, but our brains, and historically we've had leadership that looks to try and control and predict what's going to happen next. When what we need now are leaders that can sense and respond what is trying to happen in the system. The system itself, like that could be a place, could be a geographical system, it could be the send system nationally, it could be a relationship system. So if you think about the people that you are closest to and notice how you can tell that something different's trying to happen. I don't know, maybe you've had crosswords for a period of months because something new is trying to happen between you, greater clarity. Or
there's an added complexity, because in a normal world we would be able to reflect and think clearly and pull people together to spend the time to work things. But on a parallel platform, there's a burning platform and we're at crisis. So trying to influence that development is really challenging, because people they're in crisis mode because of the COVID. So it's really challenging.
Yeah, so absolutely right, Charlotte. So the first point is our ability to say, as individual leaders, this is tough. And the self-compassion piece of this work is about being able to put our hands on ourselves and say, this is really tough. May I be kind to myself? And what do I need? What do I need? What boundaries do I need to put in place? What do I need to ask for? There's something about the surge capacity of our nervous systems right now. So when our systems respond to crisis, they're only really built to deal with the crisis and then calm down and rest and restore in the body. Whereas what you've got now is people constantly in crisis mode. And we've not really faced that, apart from like wartime. Most of us have never faced that level of constant crisis. So we're facing a new beast for sure, which is why I would offer that actually being able to take really good care of ourselves by understanding, how do I feel when things are uncertain? Because for many of us, we have been conditioned that it's a kind of scary world. So our fight or flight systems are constantly trying to navigate scary, instead of being able to tolerate the sensation of vulnerability, so that we can stay in a meeting and say what we need to say, or ask for what we need, or say, do you know what, I'm going to have a break between sessions instead of dashing from this place to this place. Sometimes that requires courage. So the first pillar is about vulnerability, the uncertainty and risk, the emotion that comes with that. And there are some myths of vulnerability that came out of the research. So if we dug into our childhoods, we would find ideas about uncertainty and risk and emotion that come from our childhoods. And some of the ones that were crafted from the data, the research, was that it's a weakness. Many people think that uncertainty is a weakness, or that we don't have to do vulnerability, or we can do it on our own, or that vulnerability means sharing everything all of the time. I think Brene talks about vulnerability is not live tweeting your bikini wax on Twitter or sharing the details of your painful divorce on Facebook. So it's mutual and it's shared. When you let people see what's really inside us, it's got to be a mutual. There's got to be trust in that relationship. So, but we could have a whole day on this, and I want to open up for discussion. So, the second pillar is values. So, what matters most? Not like if I asked you all what the values were of your organization, how would you find that information, or how would you know it? Would you just reel it? So just type in the chat. Would you reel it off the top of your head? Would you have to go and look it up? How would you know what the values were? Feel it inside. Yeah. Consequence. So that's an older comment. Yeah. So many people would have to look on their lanyard or look up their organization's website to see what the words are. But we do need to be able to have it internalized, and it also needs to be shared organizationally or even within a team. So for example, if you've got a value of inclusion, what are the behaviors that go with the word and the felt sense inclusion? What are those behaviors? Because they might be different for different people, although we should have in a team, you'd want to have a common understanding about what that was. And what are the behaviors that mean I'm moving away from that individual value of inclusion? Yeah, so that's great. That's great, Natalie, that if you've got programs that are at the heart of that. For many people, they come in to do work that serves other people. Yeah, absolutely, Mark. So many people come into a profession to do really good work, and then the system, it's not an individual issue, it's a systems issue, because the system and processes call people in a different direction than feels good to them. So there's constant tension about this matters to me, but I'm being asked to behave in these ways in order to meet the needs of the system, and that doesn't feel good. We can't resolve that today, but the awareness of it can help us go, no wonder I feel X about Y. Yeah, so we have personal values, and if they're aligned with what the organization is trying to achieve, it's going to feel like a knife through butter. It's going to feel like ease. Yeah, absolutely, exactly right, Christine. That's the point of this. You can't just have some words on a page somewhere that isn't operationalized through the organization. Okay, so there's a values piece. There's a bit about trust. So I'm not going to go through this in massive detail now, but this came out of the research about if you want to create a culture with trust in it, here are the elements of trust with the acronym BRAVING. There's a boundaries piece, what's okay, what's not okay. Let me give you a story instead to try and demonstrate this, or a hypothetical example. If I've got a relationship at work where I don't feel right about it, I could sit down with the words BRAVING and ask, which bit of this makes me not trust that person? Is it because I've got a boundary that there's something that's not okay with me that I haven't told them about, and so they're crossing that boundary? They're ringing me at times of day that I've not invited, or they speak to me in a way that is not okay with me, or did they not do what they said they were going to do? That's the reliability piece. Or if I've got a relationship with Daphne and I upset her, can I hold myself accountable for what I did and my impact? Can I go back to Daphne and say, I apologise, and apologise well in a way that creates connection and repairs things? No worries, you're welcome, Alison. Sorry, you need to go. I'm going to, because I can't really tell you in detail. I don't want to just give you like loads of information. So, but there's something about this model helps us, this trust part helps us identify where there are relationships where we can't ask for what we need, or we don't feel comfortable with that person. So we can operationalize the experience of having better relationships in order to influence things, seek support to influence the change that we want to have happen. And the final pillar is rising. So there's basically this idea about walking into an arena, which is doing brave things. And when you walk into the arena, you're sometimes going to fall flat on your face. If you speak up in a meeting, or if you're not able to identify the emotion you're feeling around things being challenging, it's going to come out somewhere, somehow, if you don't examine it. So the rising strong part of Brené's work helps us. The reckoning is, no worries, of course, Sarah. What's going on with me right now, and can I get curious about it instead of reactive? really being honest about how we're thinking and feeling about things, really, because sometimes we're not even honest with ourselves, let alone telling someone else how we're thinking and feeling. And then who do we want to be? Like, who, once we've looked at things and seen the truth, what do we want to do differently next time? So these 4 pillars of courage, there's a whole lot of stuff I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you quickly that here are some ideas for if you're starting conversations with people. There are some, Brené calls them rumble starters. So the idea is, rumbling is basically just getting curious with something. So if I'm going to use you again as an example, if that's okay. If we're in a meeting and something hard happens, like, I don't know, I say something, Daphne makes a face. I might think, oh, I know she's always hated me, or that was rubbish what I said, or I'm going to make up a story about what happened because that's what the brain does. But here are some ways that I could have a conversation with Daphne about what happened. So I might say, I'm making up a story that you didn't like what I said because you made a face. And Daphne then gets to say, actually, I was trying not to sneeze. That's what my face was doing. Or I didn't sleep well last night. Or actually, yeah, I didn't like what you were saying. You were right. But until I'm curious about it with her, I don't necessarily know. So I wanted to offer you these words, and you'll have them. You can have them on the slide. So there's no need to rush through them now, because they're ways of where our challenges are, when we're trying to lead or influence, and the challenges are about relationship, which many of them are. These words help us open up a conversation with curiosity and don't create the other person feeling wrong, which would have them shut down. So Brené Brown's work, there's a whole load of free stuff of hers about daring classrooms, because the work is so important in education. It's American, so any of the videos and things might, that she's Texan, which doesn't appeal to everybody, but the research base, because it's based on people's lived experiences of human connection and also leadership, there are so many free tools at Daring Classrooms which help you create a set of values for an individual team, or maybe even a multi-agency group, to operationalize what values are. It doesn't matter if you've already got values. You might want to create a mini version of how we want to be as a leadership team, or how we want to be as a multi-agency group, helping Joe get better education or feel happier or be included. There's 2 20-minute talks that she does. The Power of Vulnerability is worth watching. If you know TED.com, there are lots of 20-minute talks there. You can contact me if you want to have more of a conversation about this. I hang out in 2 places. There's my NDTi email address on the screen, but also the work I do around Dare to Lead and this leadership, Brave Leadership. You can find me at Hello at Braveologist as well. So I'm hoping that this work gives you an introduction or an idea that it's out there. So, but it's individual development work. It's work that we each have to work through in terms of, how am I with vulnerability? Am I acting in accordance with what matters to me, my values? Can I trust myself, and can I trust the people that I'm working with? And if not, how do I create better relationships between each other using the Braving Trust framework? And do I know how to get back up? Can I be brave with my work, but then be with the disappointment or failure that might happen, and take responsibility, but also manage the feelings in my body? So, okay, I'm going to stop presenting and then invite. Charlotte, I can see you've got your hand up, so we'll ask you, and then if you want to put your video on and say hi, and you've got any questions or anything you want to share, I want to honour your time. So, and I know we're due to finish at 10 past, so we've got 6 minutes, but that could be 6 glorious minutes where something amazing happens, right? It doesn't have to be only 6 minutes. Was it a legacy hand, Charlotte?
Yeah, thank you. It was an old hand.
Okay. So, Christine, let's hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm chipping in mainly to start the conversation, really, because it's helpful to use the time productively, isn't it? So first of all, thank you so much, because I'm a psychologist, and a lot of the work that you're talking about really resonates with the work that I do. And it's been really helpful to kind of hear a little bit more structure. I tend to kind of respond very intuitively to conversations, but it's really helpful to hear the the kind of the basis, the foundation again, and kind of remind myself. So thank you for all of that. I mean, I'd already been, somebody had made reference to Brené Brown not so long ago, so I'd already accessed some of that. So it was really interesting to hear you make reference to that. I mean, I suppose for me, there's, I think working as a psychologist, I think about kind of the individual nature of this. So what can I own within it? And then also within which context might I first step into approaching taking the next steps with it. So I suppose that's the way I might take this forward in reflection from today.
Yeah, brilliant, Christine. Thank you. And thank you for saying that, because I think there's this body of work. I'm working with a group of 13 leaders at the minute in a local authority, adult social care context. And there's the body of work, and then there's the experience of, right, where are my difficult places at work? Where am I challenged? Who have I got a problem with that I've never said out loud? It really can take us to the places of depth that most of us don't, and especially if you're busy, many of us haven't got the reflection time and the courage to look at this thing and go, oh, I'm angry. And actually what's underneath that, I'm also hurt and disappointed, and I felt stupid in that meeting, or whatever it is. So I think this work, when it's unpacked in its fullest way, and you can do that by reading the books and watching the video, there's like lots of ways to do it, but it's a long-term relationship with ourselves that shifts based on us being honest about, here are the places where I'm not fully me as a leader, and when I'm dealing with difficult things, this is what happens. I disappear, I hide, I start getting tetchy. What is that? And if I'm curious about it, how do I open up more choices? And everyone's got a different story about which bits. Like Christine, you in a meeting might have a different experience of somebody than I might, and you might have different things to rumble with than I do, based on our past history and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's really
just to add to that. I mean, it's just interesting, isn't it, to actually conceptualize it as a rumble, because the other day I was in one when I was rumbling, but the other person clearly wasn't up for that. So it's kind of acknowledging, you know, can we create space for this? And 100%. That would be a really helpful process for me. So yeah, I hadn't kind of brought that to the forefront. So thank you.
Fab, you're welcome. So the Daphne, Hester, I'm coming to you, but Daphne's asked if you can please fill in the evaluation. The link is in the chat. Thank you very much. Hester, we'd love to hear from you. What's your wisdom, or what do you want to say or ask?
Hi there. I've just recently taken on a new role. I'm one of the professional project leads for a large scale project for change across Kent, and I'm from an education background. I'm a teacher, and we're trying to redesign speech and language therapy across Kent. So it's a big thing we're doing. And what I found is that I feel like I'm really in the deep end at the moment, because there's a whole load of politics that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. And I found, particularly since we're now operating in teams and I'm not face to face with people, the pace of some of the meetings can get quite overwhelming. And where I'm trying to lead this project, although I'm not the lead in terms of structure, so there are people above me, what I want to try and do is, where you're talking about trying to tap into some of those feelings and be a bit responsive to how you're responding to the situation. I don't know whether you could give some advice about how to try and create a bit of space within meetings to be able to do that, because otherwise I find that I'm so busy trying to wrap my head around what people are saying, and I feel like there's a pressure to respond quite quickly, that actually again, you're under that stress and you can't gather your thoughts and respond to it. So I was just wondering whether you could talk to that a little bit.
Absolutely. So so also, just to manage time, we've got a minute to go. If you need to leave at 10 past, please do. I'm not in a rush, so Hester, we can finish if you've got a couple of minutes, because we will end up going over time. The two things, so right now there's a pressure, there's a global shift away from productivity and pressure. No worries, Sally. The rate and pace of the energy of things can feel rushed. And I think there's a twofold thing here. There's one about influencing a system that works in that way and invites that system or those people or that meeting to a different way of working together, a different atmosphere to be created. But the first place to start is with ourselves, like the the noticing is great. I'm noticing it feels rushed and I'm feeling like I'm rushed with my reply. That's stage 1 of rising strong. Like, it's good to know. So let me take a breath and notice what's going on with me first. And maybe not in that meeting, but maybe later I realize I need to ask for more space, or set a boundary around, I'm not able to react in the speed with which it looks like you're asking me to. I'm going to need a few moments to think about that, and practicing that in our bedrooms, so that when we actually say it for real with real scary people, it comes out of us in a way that our knees might shake a bit, but that's okay. That's the vulnerability piece. So we don't go, I feel vulnerable, so I won't say it. We go, that's just the sensation of exposure. This is going to feel exposing, but I'm going to ask for what I need. You don't have to do that, but I think there's something about recognizing, do I need space and time? And here's what I would do. So in coaching, we use something called the Designed Alliance at the beginning of a coaching relationship, but I do it with groups. We spend half an hour, and if you've got a 20-minute meeting, you can spend 2 minutes at the beginning saying, what kind of atmosphere do we want to create together in this meeting? Not the agenda, not what we've got to get done, but how do we want to be with each other? What would people appreciate about that? And so one option has to, and it depends on the context. I get that it might not be relevant or safe. It might not feel safe for you to do it. But if I was at something that felt rushed or anything else, I might invite that group to a conversation together where I might say, this feels really rushed. I don't know what other people are, how they're experiencing it. Could we spend just a couple of minutes together to explore that and slow things down? Because then it gives people the opportunity to say, like, everyone then says, we've got so much to get through. But the leadership piece for me is about us being able to sense what is happening and then name it, so the rest of the system or people can go, I agree with you, should we slow it down? Or how do we do this? Because we all feel so under pressure. But you might also come up against people that say, never mind what you want, madam, we've got a lot to get through. So you might be that might be a fail, right? That might feel like something that's hard to be with. If you ask for something and someone says, no, or I'm going to disregard what you said, so I think there's an internal exploration first, but the tool of Designed Alliance is help structure to help humans work together, creating the atmosphere that they want. But if you're working with people that are not used to being in good relationship with each other, they might not even be open to that conversation. So, but you still get to, you have permission to ask for what you need. If you need space.
I'm hoping that being the fresh meat, if you like, in a relationship will give me the opportunity to create that, because there is a lot of friction between the people I'm working with.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you. That's really helpful.
The coaching skill of naming it, when you name something that's happening, and you can use words like, I'm noticing that, you're not saying this is what's going on here, everybody. You're saying, I'm noticing there's something. I've actually got a list of, Hester, can you email me? Because I've got a list of ways to describe the emotional weather. So and it's things like, it feels a bit frosty in here. If you walk into a meeting room and you're like, oh, somebody just had a row. So the courage to name it, trust your intuition and name it. You might be wrong about what happened, but normally you won't be wrong when you trust your intuition that there's something going on. You know, when stuff is unsaid, you can kind of feel it, can't you? And as a coach, I might say, I'm noticing that the story I'm making up is that something's unsaid. What are you noticing? And the person gets to say, I've said everything, or actually there is a thing. But that really only happens best in relationships with high trust. So if you're in meeting, if that hasn't been formed yet, so you want to be kind of curious and open up things, not shut things down by saying, you shouldn't have done that, or this feels. But there's a starting point about asking for what we need. I don't care how fast everyone else wants to react. I'm going to need some space to think about that.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll email you, Jacqui. Thank you.
Yeah, you do. We need to finish, don't we? Are you done for the day now, or you got more to go to?
This is it now, I think.
This is
the last.
Already. I've got another 5 minutes or so, but we'll formally close this session so that definitely you can finish the recording. And I'm thanking you all very much for being here. I hope it was helpful. I know we can't unpack fully in 40 minutes, but I hope that it gave you some things to think about. You're doing amazing work. It's tough what you're doing. I'm in awe of the work Thank you for doing it. Bye for now.